First up, the drama over a no-deal Brexit continues. Of course, the Tories' arch-Remainer, Amber Rudd, as we heard in the news, has done one of the biggest U-turns, arguably in Brexit history, by revealing she could now back a no-deal Brexit to get us out on October the 31st. So is it just a case that the Work and Pension Secretary wants to keep her job, or does she feel like all of a sudden, as Anthony Brown writes in The Spectator today, senior civil servants are switching from this idea of Project Fair to Project Reassurance? Maybe Amber Rudd just feels reassured about the idea of a no-deal Brexit. How do you feel about it? 0344 499 1000. Is Amber Rudd right to back Boris's position, or seeming to, on a no-deal Brexit? We'll hear from her in just a moment. But of course, her colleague and remaining an arch-Remainer is the former Attorney General Dominic Grieve, MP, the Conservative MP for Beaconsfield. He joins me now. Dominic, were you disappointed to hear Amber's comments on Julia Hartley-Brewer's talk radio show this morning, where she said she could now stomach the idea of a no-deal Brexit?
I didn't hear her comments, so without having heard them, it's perhaps difficult to make a comment in detail of my own. I disagree with her. I happen to think that a no-deal Brexit will be uniquely damaging for our country. And so to that extent, my views haven't changed. It's going to damage us in terms economically. It's going to damage our national security and international standing. Indeed, that's already happening, even with the prospect of it. And also our quality of life. And so for all those reasons, I think it's an extremely undesirable outcome. And I'm not entirely persuaded, from the little I've seen reported, that she doesn't think it's an undesirable outcome as well. But you would have to ask her about that.
Well, look, here's what she had to say to Julia Hartley-Brewer earlier.
Both candidates have said that no deal is part of the armoury in the negotiations going forward. And I have accepted that, the situation is that we are leaving by the end of October, but it would be so much better to get a deal. And there is lots of talk about what happens on October the 31st. Will Parliament stop it? Will John Major make some sort of judicial review? If Boris Johnson, if it were him, tries to prorogue, all these pieces could be moving around the board at that point. But what we really need is for everybody's effort to go into trying to get a deal. And that, as we know, isn't as straightforward as we would like it to be, because the Prime Minister has tried on several occasions to do that. It involves negotiations with the EU, and critically, it also involves negotiating within the Conservative Party, because there are different people with different views on that. So I'm backing Jeremy Hunt because I think he's the person to be able to get the best deal amended from the EU and be able to sell that in Parliament to people so that we can leave with a deal, which would be so much better.
So what do you think of that? Is that just a ploy to keep a job in a Boris Johnson cabinet?
I certainly wouldn't say that. She has to make up her own mind. And as I understand what she said, she thinks that she's prepared to accept the possibility of no deal because that might help improve any deal that we get and the chances of getting a deal. Now, that's an understandable position, but I have to say I think it's a mistaken one. My view is that we are not going to get a better deal or different deal by threatening to do something to ourselves which is so disastrous. When you make a threat which in practice is of a suicidal nature for the future of our own country, I don't think that those around us are going to be moved by it to change their position. So because it's unrealistic, I don't think it's going to work and as a ploy. But I do understand, she makes a perfectly fair point, that both the candidates for the leadership of the Conservative Party have embraced this. And I have to say I disagree with both of them about it. One of the issues in this leadership election is whether they really mean what they're saying. And this goes back to a comment that Rory Stewart made at an earlier stage of the leadership campaign, when he said that he was very concerned that there was insincerity in what was being said to the Conservative Party members who are being asked to vote. Because my judgment is that the threat or offer of a no-deal Brexit is unrealistic, particularly in the light of the majority opinion in the House of Commons.
There's a fascinating article in The Spectator this week by Anthony Brown, headlined "Who's Afraid of No Deal?" And he rightly points out that senior civil servants are already softening their position. Specifically, Mark Sedwell, the Cabinet Secretary, who previously sounded the alarm about a no-deal Brexit, well, he has now said that the public sector is actually in pretty good shape. to be able to deal with it. Do you disagree with his view?
I think there are two things to say. Firstly, it is the lot of civil servants that they have to serve the administration in office. And if an administration in office says that as a matter of policy they're going to pursue a no-deal Brexit, it's their duty as civil servants to try to deliver a no-deal Brexit at least cost. I don't know about the public sector, but I have to say to you that in terms of the private sector, the evidence is overwhelming that while some of the biggest corporations have taken necessary steps to deal with, or to mitigate no deal, SMEs have not. And furthermore, the sectors like the automotive industry continue to make representations to MPs pointing out that it will have catastrophic consequences for them. And I think they're right about that. Now, of course, it's open to people to disagree. It's open to people to say, I think they're exaggerating. I don't think they are. And that's my own opinion. And I think it's shared by quite a large number of Conservative members of Parliament as well.
Is there any part of you that feels a little bit guilty, Dominic, though, for letting down all of the millions of people that voted in 2016 to leave the EU? How do you justify your continued position to them?
Easily. There was a vote in 2016 which was based on a series of premises put forward by the Leavers, one of which was that it would be possible to leave the EU with little pain and much gain, indeed, virtually no pain at all. And 3 years down the track, because that's where we are, it's quite obvious that that isn't going to happen. It's possible that we can leave the EU, but it's going to require a lot of blood, toil, tears and sweat, and a huge amount of damage, some of which may never be recoverable.
But that's not what your colleagues, David Cameron, the Prime Minister of the day, and George Osborne, the Chancellor of the Exchequer of the day, said. They were very, very clear that Brexit would mean leaving the customs union, leaving the singles market, and in fact, through Project Fair, presented a catastrophic financial catastrophe.
I happen to think that David Cameron and George Osborne's assessment remains correct. But that was not the assessment put forward by Boris Johnson and the Leavers, and they were the ones who were believed. Now, they succeeded in persuading a tranche of the electorate that this was a desirable outcome.
But Dominic, is it not possible, though, is it not possible that, in fact, David Cameron and George Osborne were believed, but the British public simply wanted a Brexit no matter what the financial cost? Is that not a possibility?
Yes, it is a possibility. And if I may say so, if anybody listens to what I've been saying for the last 6 months, nearly 9, I've said, if that is the case and that is what people want, then leave we must. But you need to have another referendum so that people can confirm that. Now, I don't know if they do confirm it. That's the end of it. But what I'm not prepared to do as a Member of Parliament is to facilitate leaving, particularly on a no-deal Brexit, and we've never been able to have a deal Brexit because it's been rejected consistently by the members of the ERG in my own party, and indeed by many others across the House. I'm not prepared to sanction leaving on a no-deal Brexit without going back and asking the public if that's what they want. And if they do want it, then we will have it. And if I may say so, if people had listened 9 months ago, including the present Prime Minister, we could have had this referendum by now, and we could have put some of this, not all of it, behind us. Instead, we continue to go round and round in small circles in a major crisis, which has no easy or pain-free outcome, and honestly is getting worse for this country by the day.
So what's your strategy now? What are you going to do? Are you going to keep attempting to use bills in Parliament to make it impossible for the next Prime Minister to be able to easily get through a no-deal Brexit? And do you think you have the Speaker's backing for that?
If a Prime Minister persuades the House of Commons to back a no-deal Brexit, then the way our parliamentary democracy works, that is what will happen. But I think a Prime Minister is going to have difficulty persuading a majority of the House of Commons to back a no-deal Brexit. What we've been seeing in the last few weeks is an extraordinary constitutional development, which is at least one of the leadership candidates, Boris Johnson, who looks likely to become Prime Minister, insisting that he will use every device to try to take us out of the EU with no deal, if necessary, relegating the House of Commons to the sidelines in complete breach of every constitutional principle under which our parliamentary democracy operates. And on that, I am absolutely implacably opposed to it. It's an enormity. If it were a Labour government doing it, I would say the same thing. If it was somebody who was attempting to do it for a cause which I greatly believed in, I would oppose it 100%.
And have you voted yet in the Tory leadership contest?
I haven't yet voted in the Tory leadership contest, but I'm certainly not voting for Boris Johnson.
Well, I was going to say, I presume that you're intending to vote for Jeremy Hunt. Which, do you consider that the best of a bad bunch?
Well, he offers, I think, a potentially better future than Boris Johnson, although I have to say there are also unrealistic features to what he's been saying, of which I've been critical. But the difference between him and Boris Johnson is that I'm afraid I don't think Boris Johnson is a person who can be trusted. And that comes not from Brexit, but from a long experience of how he goes about his political operation. Now, if this is what the Conservative Party membership want, so be it. But I think that those of us who have been his parliamentary colleagues have to make a judgment as to whether he's a suitable person to be Prime Minister. And I'm afraid I don't think he is.
Will you quit the party if he's elected Tory leader?
If he's elected Tory leader, my feeling is that the way in which events will unfold thereafter will probably answer that question for me anyway, but I will consult with my colleagues.
So it is possible that if Boris Johnson becomes Prime Minister, you will leave the Conservative Party?
I think it may be very difficult for me to remain, but I don't wish to leave the Conservative Party, of which I've been a member for 47 years. So I would, I think, wait to see what he has to say and what he does. But the reality of where we are, in view of where I think he's likely to take us, is going to mean, I suspect, that it's going to be very difficult for me to do so.
Will you be giving Amber Rudd a dressing down in private?
No, of course not. No. If I speak to Amber Rudd, I shall speak to her as a friend and a colleague and somebody whose opinion I value. And for that matter, if she wishes to speak to me in order to explain to me her approach, I will always listen. And one of the things I've learnt in politics is that we have to moderate each other's opinion by dialogue. That is what politics is all about. And I don't have a monopoly of wisdom, but I do have some principles to which I think are important to me. And I am very worried at the moment about the country's future. I am probably more worried about the country's future than any time in my life.
Dominic Grieve, former Attorney General, the Conservative MP for Beaconsfield, thank you so much for kicking off the show today. So you've heard Mr. Grieve there. He says the idea of a no-deal Brexit is so terrifying to him, he will do whatever it takes in terms of Parliament, pushing bills through, any type of parliamentary procedure he can continue to use to make it difficult for the Prime Minister of the day, he will do so. But he is at odds now with Amber Rudd, the arch-Remainer, who is coming around to the idea of a no-deal Brexit. How do you feel about it? Do you think politicians like Dominic Grieve are essentially trying to cover up the views of the public? Or, like him, do you agree that a second referendum is what we need? 0344 499 1000 is my number, 0344 499 1000. After the break, though, fascinating, but for me, very disturbing new poll results showing that society is becoming less tolerant of same-sex relationships. Well, my next guest from Christian Concern thinks we have reached peak rainbow. What on earth does he mean, and what do you think? Are we becoming less tolerant in society of gay relationships? 0344 499 1000. We'll debate it in a moment. The quite shocking survey result, which shows Britain's increasingly liberal attitudes to same-sex relationships might be on the wane, or at least starting to plateau. So this is called the British Social Attitude Survey. It's been going for a number of decades, and it looks at how we feel about modern life. And despite the fact on Saturday in London, over 1.5 million people were on the streets for the biggest pride party I've ever seen, despite the fact you have lots of corporates now starting to embrace the LGBT market, and homophobia, to me, seemed to be on the wane, the survey shows something quite different, actually. Out of the people polled in the last year, only 66% of people said that same-sex relations were not wrong at all. Now, that is a worrying trend, because it's down from 68% the previous year. the first drop since 1987. So look, we've come a long way, because in 1987, only 11% of people thought that same-sex relationships were not wrong at all. So we've gone up from 11% in 1987 to 66% in 2018. But the point is, why are we going down now? What has happened in society for people to start feeling less tolerant of same-sex relations? Do you think that potentially it is because maybe you see too much of this in the media? Are you concerned about your children at school with all of the stories about teachers starting to teach same-sex relations in schools? I'd love to know what you think is making British people less tolerant towards same-sex relations. My number on that is 0344 499 1000, 0344 499 1000. You can tweet me to it, Talk Radio. Text me, of course, 87222. But I'm going to debate this now with Tim Dieppe. He is the head of public policy at Christian Concern. Tim, is it true that you think we've reached peak rainbow? And what exactly do you mean by that?
Well, I think that, like you said, I work in London here, and there's rainbow all over the place, and on it seems like virtually every shop window or shop frontage, and on businesses as well, and institutions and government buildings and so on. And I think that, people are getting a bit weary of this. It's become so establishment. It's become so much what the government is saying, what every politician is saying, what every business is saying, and so on. And people are feeling a bit like, hang on a minute, and I wonder if we have reached peak rainbow. And I think this survey perhaps is the first indication of that. And I think that
but Tim, what we're just talking about is accepting people, individuals, for who they are. So what on earth is there to accept?
I want to disagree with you about what you said here, because it's not really about tolerance. I mean, you can disagree with somebody and tolerate them. So this is not really about tolerance. This is about saying that I disagree with this practice. I disagree with this in terms of whether it's right or wrong. That's not to say the same as tolerance, right? So I can tolerate people. I can tolerate people I disagree with, and I do that all the time, and so I should, and so people should. We should tolerate people with all sorts of beliefs and practices. That's fine, but we can still disagree and retain tolerance. And so it's not really about tolerance, it's about morality here. And the point is that there still is 34% of people who disagree with
How
the morality.
would you have voted in this survey, Tim?
I would have voted with the 34%, yes. I would have said I don't think that same-sex relationships are right and good for people.
What's wrong with them?
Well, I think they're contrary to nature. It's contrary to the way we're made. Fundamentally, sex is designed to be between man and a woman. That's obvious from biology and from the way we're created. And sex is designed to be expressed between a man and a woman in the confines of a marriage between a man and a woman.
Do you think people choose their sexuality, Tim?
Sometimes. I mean, there's some people out there are happy to say that. So I think that some people do and have done. And some people don't feel that they've chosen it. And I respect that and understand that as well. So
do you choose to be attracted to women?
I don't think I did, no. But
so then why would some people choose that they were going to be attracted to someone of the same sex?
Well, you have to ask them that, don't you? It's not something I've chosen, and not something that I would encourage someone to choose either. But people have openly said, I choose to be gay. We should get rid of this idea that it's born gay.
Who said that?
Oh, there's a celebrity that said it on the media a couple of years ago.
What's their name?
Link. I can put it on my Twitter.
I don't believe you.
Well, I'll put it on my Twitter straight after this. Okay?
So Tim, I'm a gay man. Do you think I made that choice as a young child?
I haven't spoken to you about it.
Well, why would I make a choice like that, Tim? You'd have to be crazy to do that.
Well, clearly some people don't think so. Clearly some people think it's fashionable and trendy and nice to do it. It's up to them.
You keep talking about some people, Tim, but let's put those some people in one corner. Let's talk about people who simply, like the vast majority of people who are in the LGBT community, are just living the way that they were born. Because believe me, Tim, and you're talking to someone that knows, given that I am a gay man, I don't identify as a gay man, I just am one. I was attracted to people of the same sex from a very, very young age. There is no way, Tim, that is a choice. So why on earth would you go against something that is clearly about nature?
Hang on a minute. I didn't say which bit of that is. I'm a bit confused about what you're asking me now. nature.
Well, I'm making it very clear to you that this isn't a choice, because I think you'd have to be pretty sick, Tim, sick in the head, actually, if you were claiming that as an 8-year-old boy, I chose my sexuality. Are you crazy?
I haven't claimed that. I respect your experience there. And
okay, so then that's the question I'm asking. So you do accept that it's nature then?
No, not that it's nature, but I do accept that that's your experience, that you haven't chosen it. All right, so that's fair enough. That's your experience.
But then it is nature.
People I know. No, that's not the same as saying it's nature either. People have all sorts of things and feelings and so on. It's not necessarily that they're good things or good for them or right things to do.
So why would God create something that was unnatural?
Well, I don't think he has, but I think that he does.
Which means that you think that I've chosen it.
I don't know. No, I'm not saying that either. No, it's more complex than that, right? You know, we all have desires and experiences and things that we don't choose, and then, you know, the question is whether we act on them or not. I have desires and thoughts that I'm not proud of, and that I hope I choose not to act on them quite a lot of the time. And so, you know, you're not choosing your desires. Fair enough. I accept that. Okay, you do choose whether to act on them or not. So that's up to you.
Tim, what if all of a sudden you were told that it was morally wrong to ever be with a woman, Tim? Would you then, for the rest of your life, never act on that and be with men instead?
You would have to persuade me as to why that's true. You'd have to argue it with me. You'd have to persuade me as to why that's true.
Of course you wouldn't, Tim. So when you're actually thinking about your own experience here, your argument falls down.
Well, I don't think it does, actually. You would need to persuade me of the morality of that. I do seek to live a moral life. So if you can persuade me of the morality of that,
what is a moral about a man dating a man or a woman dating a woman? What's a moral about that?
Well, there's a line between friendship and a line between acting out in terms of sexual relationships and all that kind of thing, isn't there? You know, so I'm saying that I believe sexual relationships are designed to be an actor between a man and a woman, and that's best done within a marriage as well. And that's where I stand on it. Now, that's my moral belief. Now, you can choose not to be tolerant of me if you want to, okay? But I'm tolerating you in this. So, you know,
well, I'm allowing to have you on the show and put this very bigoted view out there, because obviously there are a lot of people that think like you. But what I'm actually trying to do is break down your argument and make you realise that it's totally nonsensical.
Well, you haven't persuaded me of that as yet. So I don't see why it's nonsensical at all. I've explained to you why my argument is that it's contrary to nature and that sex is clearly designed to be expressed between a man and a woman.
But you've absolutely proven the fact that it is totally not contrary to nature, because, Tim, you are very clear that you didn't choose to like women. It's just something that naturally happened to you. And I'm saying exactly the same thing happened to me from when I was a very young boy, and I realised that I was attracted to other men.
Yes. So, you know, I agree that that's your experience, okay? So, you know, there we are.
So anyway, Tim, so we've been around the circles on this, but just tell me, what do you think should happen to people like me in 2019? Should we go to gay conversion therapy? Should we just keep our relationship secret? I mean, what are you actually wanting to happen with this lack of tolerance that you have?
No, it's not lack of tolerance. I said that.
Okay, well, with this opinion, what are you wanting to happen? Do you wish that gay people would hide their sexuality, or do you want gay people to keep their relationships secret? What do you want?
No, I don't want any of that at all.
So what do you want?
What I want?
You just want to encourage bigotry?
No, and you haven't persuaded me that it's bigoted either, okay, because I'm engaging in reasoned argument with you here. That's not what a bigot does, okay? So this is not bigoted and it's not intolerant either. What I'm looking for really is respect for my position and tolerance of my position as well, and not imposing the sort of LGBT education on young people, which is a flashpoint at the moment, particularly in Muslim areas in Birmingham, where people feel like I don't want this morality enforced on my children, and I shouldn't have that enforced on my children. And what this kind of survey shows is that it's not just a tiny proportion of Muslims.
Do you know what? I mean, we've got to get to the news, but I would just say, I really, really hope that your children are taught about sexuality at school, because they're not getting what they need from their father. They are not getting a reasoned, compassioned upbringing from their father. So you're absolutely able to raise your children however you want, but it's very, very important that your children know that if they are gay, lesbian, or struggling with gender identity, or bisexual, or pansexual, or queer, or however they identify themselves, because they're not going to get the support from you at home, it's very, very important that they get it at school.
Well, I think you're trying to impose something on everyone there that
No,
is
not trying to impose anything.
Well, you are. You're trying to impose a sense of encouraging people to question their identity, to question their sexuality, to question their gender.
I'm not trying to encourage them to do it.
Well, that is
I'm just saying if they're doing it, it's very
schools.
important that they know that those options are available to them. And the good news is that 66% of people are tolerant of it.
Yes, I'm tolerant as well, as I explained. So this is not about tolerance, it's about agreement and disagreement.
Well, I do disagree with you, Tim.
Yes. Well, nice to talk to you.
Great to talk to you too. That is Tim Dieppe. He is the head of public policy at Christian Concern. I mean, obviously that upsets me. Obviously that type of view upsets me, but I am prepared to have a reasonable debate about it. What do you think? 0344 499 1000, 0349 1000. Have we reached peak rainbow, as Tim Dieppe says, and should we have tolerance for those type of homophobic views? Dave is in Basingstoke. Dave, who do you agree with on this one?
I have to agree with your last caller, Dan, I'm afraid.
Why is that?
Because I feel that I'm very tolerant of my son's homosexual. So, I'm tolerant, but I feel the tolerance doesn't come back to me. Excuse me. With my beliefs. I mean, also, I think...
Well, I'm sure people are tolerant that you're in a heterosexual relationship.
That's the thing, though, Dan. I don't mind what people get up to behind closed doors. I just don't want it kind of... it's basically being promoted, I feel.
Are you married, Dave? Are you in a relationship?
Yes, I'm married, yeah.
So do you go out in public with your wife?
I do, and I would have no problem about you going out in public with your boyfriend.
Do you ever hold hands with her? Kiss her?
Yeah, yeah, I could do it, but then again...
In public?
Yeah, but there's another problem, Dan, I want to address with you.
Well, no. Can I just ask you, Dave?
Yeah.
Do you think that's promoting heterosexuality, or are you just living your life?
Well, that's the thing. It wouldn't be allowed to be promoted. My heterosexuality wouldn't be allowed to be promoted, and I don't think it should be. Because I do believe that we are... You're gay, my son's gay. That's fine. I don't have a problem with that. I just
Sounds
don't
like
want
you
it
do.
to be... No, but I think there is another problem, Dan, that people don't address is the effeminisation of males using with, there's a plastic called bisphenol.
Are you confident in your sexuality?
Yeah, very much so.
So you're sure you're straight?
Oh, yeah, I'm straight, yeah.
Then why on earth would you mind if a man was feminine? Are you
don't
worried
mind
that you're going to be attracted to them?
No, but see, I don't believe any child at 4 years old or 5-year-old should be taught anything about sex, heterosexual sex or gay sex, because I think the beauty of children is that...
No one's talking to them about sex.
Well, no, I'm just saying that, I think that basically... I feel there is more homosexuals being born now because of we've got estrogen in the water, female hormone going in. You've got the bisphenol in plastic, which is shown in laboratory rats, causes effeminisation, and I do believe they are correct because at the end of the day, homosexuals don't produce offspring.
Well,
and it's all about population, isn't it? I know it sounds crazy, but this is true.
But Dave, you gave birth to a gay son.
I did, yes.
So there must be something wrong with you then.
No, because I think that basically during his lifetime, because of all the estrogen, the bisphenol in the plastic. This is true. Dave. No, it's not ridiculous. They know this is happening.
Don't be ridiculous.
It's
Dave,
not ridiculous.
Okay, Dave, what age did you choose to be attracted to women?
Kate Bush, Wuthering Heights.
How old were you?
About 6. I really like the video.
6 years old?
Yeah.
So before then you could have been attracted to men as well?
Yeah, maybe I could have been.
So you made an active choice to become heterosexual?
No, I was born heterosexual.
Exactly.
No, but I feel there's two types. I feel, especially with the girls, I think they're a little bit more swayed in that direction. So I believe they can be kind of what's the word? Not kind of full-time lesbian, but I feel...
You seem to know an awful lot
I do.
about gay sexuality. Are you sure you're completely comfortable in your heterosexuality?
I am, yeah. But I mean, this gay parade,
Just don't know why you'd worry about it. Why are you so worried about it?
Because it's an agenda. It's an agenda. It's like the rainbow flag, yeah? That was given by God in the Bible to show that he wouldn't use flood again to kill, but that was kind of hijacked. Like the word gay, it's hijacked. We can't use it anymore.
No, you can. Just as long as you're using it positively.
It's a gay day today.
Well, as long as you're using it positively, I'm fine with that.
Well, all I'm trying to say, Dan, is that the problem is I feel that everyone's tolerant as long as you follow their agenda.
Do you love your son, Dave?
I do very much, yeah.
Okay, well, I hope you support him, and hopefully he'll get to change your attitude over the next few years and make you a grandfather and all of those types of things. Who do you agree with? Dave, who says it's the plastic that's turning lots of people gay these days. 0344 499 1000. Why are we becoming less tolerant to same-sex relationships in 2019? In just a moment, can't wait for this. Johnny Ball, he has been caught up in this full-on attack by the Ideas police, despite the fact that he was just trying to express an honest view about climate change. He's going to be here for an exclusive interview in just a few moments on Talk Radio. Huge reaction to our previous callers about this idea that the UK is becoming less tolerant of same-sex relationships. We're going to be taking your calls on this throughout the show, 0344 499 1000. Why do you think it is? Have we reached peak rainbow? Or, clearly, as I think, in fact, tolerance is coming, it's happening, it's just going to take a little bit more time, but my goodness, we are getting there, because believe me, I've never seen London so packed as it was for Pride on Saturday. So packed, so happy, by the way. No fights, no arrests. 0344 499 1000 is my number, 0344 499 1000. But first, exclusive interview time. Our Ideas police have been on full outrage mode over the past 24 hours after poor old Johnny Ball, the TV legend, tried to express his honest views on the climate change crisis. Now, quite ironically, actually, he was at a talk on the history of maths at St George's Hall on Monday, but it was part of the Bristol's Festival of Ideas, where surely, by the way, you should be able to express ideas. But Johnny was accused of Islamophobia, which he has strongly denied, and he was also accused of climate change denial, despite the fact that all he was trying to say, he says, is talk about the fact that kids should not be alarmed at school. Now, Bristol St George's Hall said it's actually apologised for some reason for his section about climate change and currently investigating the Islam claims. Well, luckily, Johnny Ball is with me now to explain exactly what went on. Johnny, this just seems absolute madness.
It was very bizarre. The audience was about 25% kids, young kids that are brought in by their families who are fans of mine, who have known me for years, and it was a very, very happy time. When I'm doing maths, I have to keep it simple because of the audience, because the very few people are the actual mathematicians, and with the kids and everything, so I have to keep it simple and jolly about and everything. And so it was so odd that it took this turn. And I really think I was being sandbagged. I think there were people in there who... I don't understand why. Anyway.
Well, let's clarify both cases, Johnny, because we need to get the facts out there about actually what was said. Because you are now being accused of Islamophobia. But in fact, you were just talking about the history of Islam, weren't you? So can you explain exactly what you said?
Period where my book, Wonders Beyond Numbers, A Brief History of All Things Mathematics, is out there, and it's selling very well, and it's selling in China and all over the place. And Chapter 8 is a chapter called Mathematics Was Never a Religion. And the first thing I do, or one of the first things I do in that chapter, is talk about Islam, which actually started when the new Islam actually conquered the north coast of Africa and all of Spain. But in doing that, they resurrected the mathematics from Greece. They took in the mathematics from India. They eventually gave it to Europe, and the Dark Ages ceased because of Islam and its ability to convey mathematical ideas. Today, all our numbers are called Arabic numerals because they came from the Arabs. I am incredibly supportive of them. I couldn't be... I don't have a racial nerve in my body, I assure you. I never have had.
And then climate change denial. Now, I think we have to be able to have a debate about all of these issues. Okay?
So I can tell you what I said there.
Yeah, so let's clarify exactly what you said, because as I say, at the moment, St. George's Hall have actually apologised for these comments for some reason.
Well, that's a bit disappointing, because they haven't talked like that to me, you know, and the staff, the backstage staff, will say, well, this is crazy, we don't know what's happening.
So what did you say,
I show
Johnny?
them the globe, and I show them that 50% of the Earth's surface is the Pacific Ocean. That's how big it is. And then I said, and of course, it has a great effect. There's a weather system every few years called the El Nino, and that actually causes more disruption to the climate than humans do. And we know that's true, because things go up and down according to El Nino. It's a fact. But I didn't dwell on it. I'm not trying to sell it. I'm not trying to sell something to people. It's a fact. Now, 2 people walked out on that. 2 people dressed very lightly. I would say around young pension age, but they walked out. I couldn't believe it. I really couldn't believe it.
And then you also spoke about the fact that there was alarmism at our schools for kids when it came to climate change. Explain what you meant there.
Well, I find it's very sad that children should be encouraged, by who I don't know, to march out of school to complain about complain that we're all going to hell in a handcar for climate change, because it is not rampant. There are problems. The human race is an incredible weight on the earth. Our pollution is dreadful and terrible, and it's all got to change, and it's all got to be better. But on the other hand, it is not climate change that is going to cause the end of mankind as we know it. It's just not so.
I know,
and I've got to say that, even though I support so many of the actions. Now, the other thing I said is that quite clearly, because of the subsidies given to wind farms, I didn't say this. This is I'm telling you in more detail. Because of the subsidies given to energy firms to produce wind farms, solar panels, and all kinds of things like that, not just in UK, but in the whole of Europe and even America, every family is poorer. And the poorest are poorer by a greater degree because of the increase in energy prices by governments giving subsidies to build wind farms irrespective of whether they're used or not.
Because one of the problems,
it's a tragedy,
Johnny,
because people are generally poorer.
Yeah.
So whether it's right or wrong, what is wrong, that it's damaging the lives of poor people. And that's why I'm against it.
I do worry that some of our kids are being brainwashed at the moment. And look, I'm someone who has always supported conservation work, and I obviously think there are issues with the climate. Of course there are.
Yeah.
But I worry about young children sobbing, thinking that the end of the world is near because of what the UK is doing when it comes to climate change. Because actually, we're doing a lot of work.
We're 1% of the Earth's population. Our pollution is 2% of the Earth's population. The incredible stories that vapor trails from aircraft are pollution when they're just water crystals. You know, they're small clouds. As the aircraft goes past, it compresses the water in the air, turns it into crystals, and you get this. There's no pollution there. And the whole this is a statistic that I think is right, that the whole of the aviation industry only produces 2% of the CO2 of industrial CO2. That's all they produce. So you're going to close down Heathrow because you would like Great Britain to turn down the efforts when the rest of the world carry on for 2%.
No, exactly.
Irrespective of whether it is CO2 that's causing
Johnny,
climate change.
are you going to keep on doing your talks?
I have reservations about.
Are you going to keep on doing your talks? Are you going to keep being outspoken?
Of course I am. I will still stay clear of this because I don't want to be controversial with people, and I want people to enjoy it. I'm then accused of using a German accent. It's a comedy routine. I've just said Galileo was coming past the Linea Tarapeza, a slate came off the roof, missed his shoulder about 6 inches. It hit him on the head. It's a joke.
I know.
And then I go to explain...
You can't
Kepler,
make a joke these days.
And then Kepler had a ball and string gadget. You get a tube, small tube, put a rope through it, put a tennis ball on the end, and by holding the tube and pulling the string, you can make it revolve. That is the toy that Kepler used to show how gravity worked. It's the same toy that Isaac Newton made. There's one in the Royal Society, and I use that toy because it's the most brilliant explanation of how gravity works. And I did it, because it was Kepler, with a German accent. I've done it for years.
Well, it's the new woke world that we're in. But Johnny Ball, you keep on keeping on. That is the legendary TV presenter explaining that he's not an Islamophobe, but he does have some issues with the climate change debate. And I think you could very much hear from what he was saying that he's someone who's passionate about the environment, and a lot of this criticism completely unfair. Of course, we have been debating this hour why on earth society is becoming less tolerant of same-sex relations. Tim Dieppe was on earlier, the head of public policy at Christian Concern, saying he's very much part of the 34% that are opposed to same-sex relationships. He also believes we have reached peak rainbow, and things like pride are just trying to force immoral views on our kids. What do you think? 0344 499 1000. Sean is on the line from Yorkshire. Now, Sean, I believe you are a Christian as well. Do you
Very much
agree with Tim Dieppe's position on this?
Absolutely not.
Well, I'm so glad to hear it. I'm relieved.
I cannot believe I'm hearing this, Dan. It's like this is the 1970s. We must have a lot of gay fish then, if it's all in the water. That's all I can think. No, I'm not. And the reason I rang, and I was very passionate when I heard this, is that I want people to know that, you know, my God and the Jesus that I, you know, believe in, and believe in peace and love of everybody, right? Okay? And when people ask me, you know, as a Christian, why have you know, tolerance and, you know, I have a gay son, which I do, why does it not bother you? Because God gave us free will. You know, he allowed us to be who we want to be. And I believe very strongly that God cares about us. I believe that Jesus cared about people. Jesus never mentioned homosexuality, not once. It's in the Bible, I understand that. But like any religion, we have advanced and moved on. And for me, to hear a man who claims to, you know, worship God and believe in God, I cannot believe what I heard today. I really cannot. And it upset me very much because I don't want people to think that Christian people are intolerant. There is some people who follow religion have an intolerance to homosexuality, and that's their choice. But I can assure you the church that I attend is a very loving church with gay people in, and we just care about God and believe in loving each other and being peaceful. And that's to me what my religion is to me. It's peace and caring about each other. That's it. It's simple.
Well, Sean, that is a perfect note on which to end the hour. Positive, uplifting, and it does show you actually that it is possible to strongly believe in religion and also be tolerant to all groups in society. But do you disagree? It has been a very, very difficult 24 hours for the Labour Party. The documentary on Panorama last night asking whether the Labour Party is anti-Semitic made for very, very disturbing viewing. Some people, including Politico's Playbook this morning, saying that the party is in a near state of meltdown. Of course, the film featured 8 former staff members who went on the record to set out very, very concerning issues they had about how senior officials close to Jeremy Corbyn have dealt with anti-Semitism within the party. Now, of course, Team Corbyn have pushed back incredibly hard on this. Corbyn has even criticised the BBC journalist behind the report, John Ware, despite the fact in the past he is on the record saying he's brilliant at his job. So what is really going on within Labour? Why are all of these leaders of the Labour Party speaking out? Tom Watson, for example, saying he was shocked, chilled and appalled by what he's just seen on Panorama. Yvette Cooper saying it's truly, truly awful. I'm joined now by Leah Levan, who represents the Jewish voice for Labour. a Corbyn supporter. You must, though, Lee, have been concerned about what you saw in this Panorama documentary last night.
Well, I am concerned. I'm concerned about the relentlessness of the attack. I am concerned, certainly, if anybody, whether they're staffers or people who've been falsely accused of anti-Semitism, suffer any mental illness. But I am most concerned of all by, as I say, the relentlessness of this attack and the fact that this...
Shouldn't you be more concerned about the anti-Semitism within the party?
Well, okay, let me get to that. Absolutely. So, what is this? Where is the evidence? So there was what you called a documentary, which I've read as called an investigative piece of journalism, and it was nothing of the sort. So it said a question: Is the Labour Party anti-Semitic? And it didn't ask the question. It set out. It had decided in advance. And this is, John Ware had decided in advance, and he has a form on this. And then he set out to prove his thesis. Now, he may be entitled to do that, but he's not entitled to call that an investigative inquiry. So the reality is, and Jenny Forby has given figures, and even the figures that I have read in terms of submissions from organisations opposed to Corbyn to the EHRC that was mentioned in your introduction amount to something like, this is accusations, by the way, to something around... Hold on a minute, let me finish my point.
Okay.
To about 0.5% of the membership of the Labour Party. Now, that's too many, but how have we got to a situation when allegations, not findings of real anti-Semitism, which definitely exist, no one that I know is denying that, but how have we got to a position where the portrayal of the Labour Party is not that there is some anti-Semitism which needs to be dealt with and maybe could be dealt with better, but that it is rife with anti-Semitism when the accusations only mount up to less than 0.5% of the membership? How has that happened? And I can make some specific points. Obviously, and as I have been travelling all day.
Hold up, Leah, because let me ask you this. You're saying it wasn't a journalistic investigation. There was official after official after official on the record. And many of the claims they were making were backed up with email proof, and many of the claims they were making were simply backed up by the fact they were talking about their own mental health issues. Former officials who say the anti-Semitism in the party made them consider committing suicide. How can you dismiss that as some type of BBC hatchet job?
No, I'm not dismissing, and I made specific reference to concern about anyone who's experiencing that. But let me pick up on a couple of the specific individuals who were on that programme. There was somebody, I think his name was Mr. Westerman, who was investigating in Liverpool Riverside. During the day, I've heard from comrades in Liverpool Riverside who were involved in those investigations, being interviewed or being silent witnesses to those interviews. What he alleges happened didn't happen, and there are recordings to prove it. Nobody asked him, no one even realised that he was Jewish. Nobody asked him, where did he come from? Did he come from Israel? What people asked him was, which branch did he come from? Like, which Labour Party branch? And then he said, as I understand it, much as he said in the programme, I don't think that's relevant. And there was a bit of a discussion about that. That's fine. Nobody...
Okay, well, that's one case that's one case that you're claiming.
There's one more.
Well, let me put one to you. Let me put one to you.
No, let me just give one more.
Who? Which one?
No, the young woman who talked about Jackie Walker.
Who? What's her name?
I cannot remember her name.
I want to talk about Cat Buckingham. I want to talk about Cat Buckingham, Leah. No, because you don't even know the name of this person you say you're talking about. So let's talk about Cat Buckingham.
And she told things, she said things that were not true.
Okay.
First of all, she never interviewed Jackie Walker. Had that clarified today. Secondly, she referred to Jackie saying that Jews were the financiers of the slave trade. Jackie Walker was in what she thought at the time, because we didn't all understand how Facebook worked, was a private conversation. When it was pointed out to her and she was suspended, she immediately said, of course I should have said. She was investigating her own ancestry, which included Dutch Jewish people. What she was saying was, what she immediately acknowledged that she should have said were amongst the financiers.
Okay, Leah, I don't know about that specific case. I need to talk to you about things I do know about. Let me ask you about Kat Buckingham. Leah, let me ask you about Kat Buckingham. She was the former chief investigator on the disputes team who told Panorama she had a breakdown and decided to leave the party as a result. She said she was stuck between an angry and obstructive leader's office and an arcane disciplinary system. I couldn't hold the tide and I felt so powerless and I felt guilty and I felt like I failed. This is the woman who was at the centre of the investigation. How do you dispute what she says?
Well, I don't know the details because we weren't given the details. We were given her opinion.
Them.
I can't dispute it because I have no evidence.
You're in denial, Leah.
No,
you are in denial.
I'm not in denial. That's not fair. I'm not in denial. And I said right at the beginning, when I started the conversation with you, that I have every sympathy for anybody who has suffered from mental illness. And if the stress of the job...
Was it appropriate, Leah? Was it appropriate for you to write online last year, Jews are often agents rather than instigators of exploitation? Yeah. Is that yet another example of anti-Semitism within Labour?
Okay, can I explain that?
Go ahead.
Exactly. Okay, and if you let me do this without interrupting, it will take a couple of minutes, because that is exactly the sort of thing that's been happening. On my Facebook page, and I say I can't find my Facebook page from however long ago it was, I was standing as a candidate to be a councillor in Hastings, and people were looking, I don't know, for me. I was actually having a conversation on Facebook about... I think it's called I Am Not Your Hero. I can't remember. It was a film about James Baldwin, who was a black American writer, I think mainly in the early 60s. And you were commenting on an article which was titled Austria's Neo-Nazis Find Friends in Israel.
That was the post you were commenting on.
But I want to tell you how things are getting distorted. I provided a context for a quote from James Baldwin. And now that quote from James Baldwin, which was not James Baldwin being anti-Semitic either, has been attributed to me, when I never said, and it was in inverted commas because I was quoting James Baldwin and explaining why he said that.
Can I read you out a line from the Spectator editorial today about Labour? It says, the party which was set up to protect workers from bullying and overbearing employers, and which more recently has campaigned to prevent NDAs being used to silence whistleblowers, has itself come to behave like the very foe against which it defined itself. Isn't that a damning indictment on where Labour is at today?
If that's the case, I'm sorry, I can't see enough from last night to say it's all credible. I'm not saying it's all nonsense. I wouldn't dream of saying that. I have not seen the evidence. So, yes.
Why is Jeremy Corbyn refusing to speak about this today? Why has he gone to ground?
He hasn't gone to ground.
Yes, he has.
What is he going...
He's refused to ask journalists questions today. He had some seemingly mad-looking woman shouting insults when he got into his car in a foreign language to avoid questions from the press. If there is nothing to hide, if he is not anti-Semitic, then why not today come out and pledge to clean up the party?
He is not anti-Semitic. He has said time and time again, and nobody believes him. None of his opponents believe him.
Of course we don't believe him, because look at the evidence.
He has done.
Look at the evidence.
Since the appointment of Jenny Formby, the allegations, the accusations, and the cases have been dealt with 4 times as fast as in the period under McNichol, who opposed Jeremy Corbyn. absolute was given to her as her number one priority, and as I say, it has been sped up. The people involved to create the panels has been dramatically expanded so that these cases can be dealt with.
So what people saw about Jeremy Corbyn in last night's documentary was that he defended, this is according to Matt Chorley, by the way, in Red Box and The Times, he defended a blatantly anti-Semitic mural. He appeared on Iranian state television peddling anti-Israeli conspiracy theories. He praised Hamas as friends, and he shared a platform with the hate preacher Raed Salal, even inviting him for tea on the Commons terrace.
Yeah, and what about all the other...
Are any of those actions anti-Semitic?
I think not. And I think that you need to look at all the other things that he has done, the context for those things.
So what's Tom Watson talking about, Leah?
The mural was definitely an error, and he apologised for that. It's like an apology counts for nothing. You're not allowed to make a mistake as a human being.
But he's doing it time and time again. If it was one mistake, it would be okay. What's Tom Watson talking about?
If it was an investigation, you would also have all of the things that Jeremy Corbyn has done to support Jewish people. For example, supporting some of their, I can't remember these, I think to keep a cemetery. He has stood with the Jewish community time and time again in his area, in the neighbouring area where there's a large concentration, significant concentration of Haredi Jewish people. Who many of whom support him, not all. I mean, why should they? They're not homogenous any more than the rest of the Jewish.
Final question, Leah. So why is Tom Watson and Yvette Cooper, why are they both so horrified about this? Do you think they're just being political here? Are they just trying to get one over Corbyn?
Yes.
Okay. I think you're living in cloud cuckoo land, Leah, but I really appreciate you coming on the show. That's Leah Levain. She is the Jewish Voice for Labour activist. Doesn't believe there's an issue with Labour when it comes to anti-Semitism. Quite depressing, that. Is it time for Britain to just throw out the idea that we are now a society anchored in the Christian faith and say that we're now secular? The report seems to suggest that that is very much where the public is heading. That is certainly the trend line. Or do you think it's important that we continue to make sure religion is at the heart of our society? 0344 499 1000. 0344 499 1000 is my number. Really fascinating results on this on our Talk Radio poll, which you can vote for at Talk Radios on Twitter. Right now, 61% of people saying that Britain should become a secular society, 32% saying no, we shouldn't, and 7% saying something else. Lots of great feedback here. Andy has messaged to say definitely not. Britain is becoming more polarised, more angry. Tensions are reaching limits never seen before. Religion may be the only way to put the brakes on our capacity to hate in light of the butchery that occurred of secular Europe during the 30s. But then my say says religion has held back society for far too long. Time to ditch it. No special privileges for fairies at the bottom of the garden worshippers. And then Sticker actually says the problem is the leftist education system, which has taken away the Christian teaching in schools, which served us well for so long. At the same time, they have ring-fenced Islam from criticism to protect their core vote. So what do you think? Do we need to protect religion in Britain, or is it time, as those poll results seem to suggest, that we just accept that society is heading in a secular direction? 0344 499 1000 is my number. 0344 499 1000. But joining me to debate this right now is Graham Nichols. He is the director of Infinity, a network of 1,200 evangelical churches and ministries across the UK. He's also a pastor of a church in Sussex. And Stephen Evans is the chief executive of the National Secular Society. So, Graham, let me start with you. If you look at these poll results, is it not about time that you accept that Britain and the UK is no longer what previously you might have described as a Christian country?
Yeah, good afternoon. I don't have any problem accepting that. I think, in a way, these statistics are just shaking out what most of us in Christian ministry have realised for a long time, which is, it's a hard time for Christianity in this country at the moment. It's hard because many people don't believe. They're either just apathetic or they're hostile to us. So I'm not campaigning at all for some kind of traditional, organised religion overlay for our country. I think that is outdated. I think it's sad that that's the fact. I think it leaves our society rather hopeless without knowing about Christ and all of his work and what he's done. But I've got to accept the reality. That's where we're at, and we as Christians have got a hard job working at telling the gospel, trying to love people, and trying to grow the church for the glory of God. But we've got a hard job on our hands, and we recognise that.
Stephen, as the Chief Executive of the National Secular Society, given these poll results, do you find that the Christian church still gets sort of a leg up in society that other organisations don't?
Good evening. Hi. Well, absolutely. Part of the remit of the National Secular Society is to challenge the religious privilege that we see in society. So, the church should absolutely now be cut loose from the state to stand on its own 2 feet and to either succeed or fail in the marketplace of ideas that all other religions and ideologies have to compete in. So, we should move towards between a secular state.
So how do you think the Christian faith is given advantages by the state?
Okay, well, first of all, the Anglican Church is established in law, so we are a kind of, even though we are a secular society, we're not a secular state.
No, we're not, exactly. That's our
head of state, in fact, our head of state, the British monarch, has to be an Anglican. They have the dual role of head of state and supreme governor of the Church of England. We have Anglican clerics that sit as of right in our parliament, giving them unique influence over the laws that affect each and every one of us. And we also organised a state education system around religious identities. So a quarter of all schools are Church of England schools, a third of schools are faith schools. And I think that's a really divisive thing to do. And, one thing we don't share as a population is religion anymore. So it's a very divisive to organise schooling around religious identities. But, of course, that gives the Church of England access to young people, access to parents, and that's what they're pinning their hopes on survival on. I don't think they should. I think churches should be absolutely free to evangelise, to proselytise, and spread whatever message it is that they wish to spread.
So, Graham, how do you respond to that, Graham?
I don't think the Church of England or any other church schools are trying to proselytise through churches. I think, sadly, many Church of England schools are not hardly religious at all, which is part of the problem. They're pretty much as secular as any of the other schools. So I don't think we have a leg up in that sense. And you've got to accept that in terms of social outreach, Christians are doing loads of good work. They do more youth work across the country than any other grouping do, looking after children. They do more work with food banks, more work with helping the homeless and so forth, and more just social interaction with people. So I think they're not like a harmful, sinister, subversive group of people.
That's absolutely correct. But what about the point that Stephen makes about the fact that the Church of England remains enshrined in law, and the fact that the head of state remains, of course, the head of the Church of England?
Yeah, no, I get that point. The trouble is, because I'm not an Anglican, I'm a free church guy, an independent church guy. I can't speak very favourably about the Church of England, but I think you have to recognise the fact of history and how Christianity has been a major influence. And actually, all our thoughts about laws and rights and equality.
It's caused a lot of trouble too, though, hasn't it, Graham?
Well, sure, religion in general, but that's to do with the sinful hearts of people. That's not to do with religion. The religious influence in this country has massively shaped Western democracy. And so you take that away and you've got nothing. It's like one of your callers or correspondents said, that if you just have a secular philosophy, there's actually nothing to unite around. There's no reason to do anything for each other. There's no purpose, there's no morality, there's no hope. So
But Stephen, that's just not true, is it? Because, for example, I've just been talking about the Pride March. There's nothing religious about that. But believe me, 1.5 million people were together for a joint purpose to celebrate life, and it was nothing to do with religion.
No,
sure, that was a moment of a group of people coming together, absolutely. But, in terms of uniting around a common philosophy for good, I don't think that is happening. And I think religion... Okay.
But the whole point is the country isn't uniting around any type of religion. We unite around football, don't we?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
One thing we don't share as a population is religion, so that's not something that we can unite around. What we should unite around, I think, is a commitment to equality and human rights and the shared values that we all have. You paint a very bleak picture of life without religion, but if you look at every sociological measure of well-being, whether it be poverty, crime rates, economic development, you name it, the more secular states, the more non-religious states, fare so much better than the more religious states. So non-religious societies tend to be...
I don't think that assertion has much substance to it.
Sorry?
I don't think that assertion has much substance to it. I think there's some very short-term statistics about certain societies.
Stephen, from the point of view of the National Secular Society, are you concerned, for example, that Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex, she actually converted and was baptised at the Church of England by the Archbishop of Canterbury before the royal wedding?
Yeah.
Does something like that concern you?
Well, what would concern me about that is that I believe in everyone should have the right to religious freedom. We should all be free to believe whatever we want. The one person in the UK who doesn't have religious freedom is the future monarch. They have to be an Anglican. So we're going to get to a situation in the future where we have a monarch who actually isn't an Anglican. In fact, statistically, it's very unlikely that the young monarchs that we see today would be Anglicans. So, it's a ridiculous situation that we have. To be head of state, you have to be an Anglican. I think everyone should enjoy religious freedom, and that includes the head of state.
So, Stephen, is the National Secular Society calling on political parties to take a look at their policies around religion? What do you actually want to happen?
We have. A couple of years ago, we released something called the Manifesto for Change, which was titled Rethinking Religion and Belief in Public Life. And that sets out a whole set of policy responses to this shift we're seeing in demographics and shift in religion and belief. And so that's basically a move towards a more secular society, an inclusive education system, and just broadly speaking, a society that's freer and fairer for everyone. So everyone gets to enjoy.
Can I just say that there's a
final word, Graham.
Yeah, I could just make a point that I think there's a fallacy that the secular society and other groups are making, which is it's possible to have a neutral philosophy that kind of allows religious freedom and so forth. Actually, we're moving towards a non-neutral, secular, anti-God philosophy, which doesn't actually allow religious freedom, and it's happening all over the place. And but I'm not complaining about that, because I think my God's bigger than that, and I just want to get on with telling people about Jesus.
Well, it is an absolutely fascinating debate. That is Graham Nichols, the director of Affinity, the Evangelical Churches, and Stephen Evans, before that, the chief executive of the National Secular Society. Of course, we do have this poll running at Talk Radio. Should Britain become a secular society? 61% of you saying yes and 32% of you saying no. So very much backing up the results of this survey. Sky Sports is going to have a channel dedicated entirely to netball. The games are broadcast on the BBC as well, on YouTube. How have you made this happen? Is it all down to that win at the Commonwealth Games?
I don't think it is. I mean, that win at the Commonwealth Games was an amazing moment, but we've been working really hard for the last 10 years to put all of this all in place, really. This has been a plan that we started back in 2012, and it's just come to fruition at a time when, like you say, women's sport is on the up, and we all say at work, it's like the stars all aligning for us at one moment. And that Commonwealth Games gold, what that did was it just highlighted all the work, and it gave us that moment. But the difference, I think, for netball was when that moment came, we had so many ways for women and girls to play the game. We had our Super League, which is broadcast on Sky. We had our internationals already scheduled with Australia and New Zealand. So we've kept the story going right up to this moment when we've now got the World Cup.
And what was so great is all of those people who watched that match live on the BBC all of a sudden saw, wow, what athletes these women are. And it allowed you to create some stars in the England Roses team, which is so exciting. Because, Joanna, it's fair to say, isn't it, that netball is still by far the most widely played sport for young women in England?
It is. 1.4 million women and girls play this actually on a weekly basis. So the numbers are staggering. And it's still probably the most played sport within schools, although obviously sports coming off the school curriculum, which is a tragedy for all sport. But it is played by a huge number of women and girls, and they've just been waiting for their sport to be recognised. And we're so proud of the governing body.
It is an outrage that has been ignored for so long.
It is, absolutely, because these girls are so athletic. I mean, anybody that comes to watch international netball now, it is not like school netball. This is so incredibly physical. In fact, Shani Layton, who's one of the recently retired Samsung Diamonds, world champion twice over, now plays Aussie rules football. And she said today she's nowhere near as fit or as strong as when she played netball. So people who think it's navy blue knickers, it really is not navy blue knickers anymore.
Oh, my goodness. I know. And it can be vicious as well, can't it?
It can be vicious. Yeah.
So, I mean, Joanna, big pressure now because you had the Lionesses into the semi-finals. You've got the cricket team into the final on Sunday. England actually go in the favourite for this World Cup. Is there any concern that that pressure of playing at home, being the favourites, can take a toll in a negative way?
I think it's such an interesting point because when we actually bid for the World Cup, we bid because we wanted home advantage.
Yeah.
Because there's so much evidence that says that home advantage gives you that extra moment. But if I'm honest, at the Commonwealth Games, the girls were able to go under the radar.
Well,
there was
exactly,
no pressure.
yeah.
But, I mean, they've been walking around Liverpool today. People are recognising them. Children are asking for their autographs, which is what we've always wanted. But it does add additional pressure without a shadow of a doubt. But Tracy's got them into such a great mental place. They're really enjoying this.
And that's Tracy Neville, and she's
build-up.
obviously part of the Neville clan, isn't she? The sister of
She is.
Phil. So, the signs are right. The signs are right. So you've got the Cricket World Cup final this Sunday, and then potentially you could have England in the Netball World Cup final the Sunday after. Wouldn't that be amazing?
Wouldn't that be amazing? And that's our goal. Our goal has always been to make it to the final. It was the goal to make it into the final of the Commonwealth Games. And once you're there, anything can happen. And that's what we want to do. We want to deliver a final for these fantastic fans in Liverpool.
Well, good luck, Joanna. You have done an incredible job building the profile of this sport over a very short period of time. And good luck to the England Roses. That's Joanna Adams. She is the Chief Executive of Netball England. It was just after the show yesterday, actually, that I broke this shocking story on the Sun's website that an intruder had been on the loose at Buckingham Palace in the early hours of yesterday morning when the Queen was asleep in the palace. So a 22-year-old man was somehow able to scale the fence, get down inside the grounds of the palace, even managed to get to a door. Thankfully, it was locked, but you just have thoughts. And what's strange, some people did actually tell me that they thought it could be a copycat of Michael Fagan. Do you remember this? 37 years ago, almost to the day, he ended up getting inside the Queen's bedroom one morning. So the poor Queen has had to deal with nearly 4 decades of security scares at Buckingham Palace. And surely serious questions have to be asked about how this man was able to scale the fence in the first place. Well, 2 people who know all about this join me now. Di Davis, who is a former head of Royal Protection, and Ingrid Seward, the very brilliant editor-in-chief of Majesty magazine. So, Di, let me start with you. How on earth does someone actually get over the fence of Buckingham Palace in the first place? They're not things that can be done to stop that from even being a prospect, a possibility.
Well, you have to look at it in the balance. There's a large frontage. Parts of it stretch quite a long way. And on the south side, there's Ambassador's Gate. Now, it's not clear to me which side this guy got in.
It was the front, apparently. It was right in front. You know where they do the changing of the guard? It was right there.
Right. Okay. Well, if that's the case, I'm astonished in one sense because you have what's known as a fixed post there. In other words, 24/7, 365, there are officers posted there. So how on earth anyone could climb in front of them and not be immediately detained, I don't know. And clearly, if I was in charge, I'd be asking that question like everyone else.
And he was able to run around, Di, for 4 minutes. But what the police have briefed is that was because they had to ascertain whether he was armed. But what I would be concerned about is what if he was armed with a bomb? There's a lot he could do. And there's a lot of damage he could do in 4 minutes.
Well, I don't know who had the stopwatch there, counting this, and that's not being defensive. I don't know is the truth. When I was in charge, I made sure that everyone coming to that department became a firearms officer. And certainly if I'd been there and I'd seen somebody in those circumstances, they may well have been justified in drawing those firearms. And perhaps he was very lucky he wasn't shot. And perhaps they're lucky now they have a far more liberal regime than when I was in charge. I took no nonsense from anyone, But there we go. That's where we are. No, I agree with you in one sense. It is disturbing, but I have to tell you, on a weekly basis, people try and get in. Most of them, 99%, are mentally ill. They call them fixated. And this happens at most of the palaces one way or the other. So it is a constant issue. And again, without going into technical details, and I'm sure they're far better than when I was there, you would be surprised if it's true, and I say if it's true, that it took so long to apprehend this man. Lessons, one of the things I've learned over the years, and I lecture on it now, is the history of attacks on the royal family from George III up to now. One of the things I constantly say on programs like yours is learn the lessons of history and then translate them into the actions of today and certainly tomorrow. Somebody will be looking into this to see, are there lessons? And we keep hearing across all manner of organizations, now we've learned the lessons. Well, sometimes we don't know the history, and sometimes we don't apply history to today's tactics.
Ingrid, I just feel so sorry for the Queen, because I feel like surely she would want to have the confidence by now that she could be safe in Buckingham Palace. And yet again, she's had to be told there was another incident.
Well, I think she won't be too worried. She might be very annoyed, but she won't be too worried because he didn't get into the palace. And of course, as Di Davis was saying, there is a huge area of wall and gate. And if somebody really wants to get in somewhere, unless they are apprehended and shot, there's probably very little you can do to stop someone at least scaling a gate. In any huge building like that, it said it took 4 minutes, and I suppose in those kind of terms, 4 minutes is a long time. And he actually managed to get across the forecourt, which is where you see the changing of the guard, to one of the doors. Perhaps it was the Privy Purse door, and luckily the door was locked, but it would be. But the fact that he actually got to a door is extraordinary, because even when you're driving into the palace, say for an official thing, there's all kinds of things you have to go through, and there's always certainly more than 2 policemen at the gate. But of course, this was 2 a.m. I do find it strange, but it happened, and it does happen. And I don't think the Queen would be frightened by it. I think she'd just be rather annoyed. Because
isn't it the fact, though, Ingrid, I do understand to an extent that nowhere can be Fort Knox. It is possible to get into places. But in saying that, if people think, if bad, nasty people, if terrorist organisations think that Buckingham Palace has soft-touch security, then does it not become more of a target? Because you pretty much know if you try and scale the fence at the White House, you will be shot.
Well, yes, absolutely. But we have a different culture than they do in America, thank goodness. But I think if somebody really wants to get into somewhere, it is possible. But as I said before, it's just the length of time it took to apprehend him. Or maybe he was apprehended straight away, but they didn't do anything. But it does seem...
No, he was definitely on the loose for 4 minutes, but the police were saying that was because of the fact they needed to ascertain whether he was armed or not, so presumably suggesting that armed police were there in case he was armed, and then they would have shot. And obviously, look, clearly if this is someone that's mentally ill, you don't want an unnecessary shooting, clearly. And I'm not saying that they should be that heavy-handed, but I just find it weird that there's nothing they can do with the perimeter, with heat sensors and that type of thing.
Well, I think there are there. I mean, what we don't know is how many people have unsuccessfully tried to get into Buckingham Palace. And I'm sure it probably runs into many hundreds, because it is a target, and it is a target for people that maybe are obsessed with the monarchy or obsessed with the Queen, like Fagin says he was.
So tell me about that, Ingrid, because some suggestion that this could have been a Michael Fagin copycat. It remains the most famous incident, doesn't it?
It does. I mean, this was, as you said, 37 years ago, and he scaled a wall. It was obviously much easier to do it in those days. He scaled a wall, and he got inside through an open window. But he got inside, and then I think he wandered around and then left, and then came back again the next day or the next night. It was the next morning, I think. And
no, I'm sorry, can I correct you? It wasn't. He got in June and wandered around, drank the wine, etc., and it was a month later. But that doesn't
I didn't realise that. That's interesting.
Yeah, no, it doesn't excuse anything that happened as far as Fagan. But can I just very quickly butt in and say there are layers. Royal security is like an onion. There are layers and layers and layers. And the fact that he got over a wall is only the first layer. Without going into what then happens, trust me, there are, as a result of Fagan and other incidents, and again, I can't tell you, so many incidents have happened across the years that I can't simply talk about. But what I'm telling you is I can assure you if he'd got in, then there would have been huge repercussions for him and possibly others.
So you think the Queen is safe, Di, at Buckingham Palace?
Well, she's as safe as one she will permit it to be. And again, without going into details, her views on privacy and secrecy and et cetera, and her own dignity have to be respected. So the officers doing the job have a difficult balance. I remember when I issued the order that we use Heckler Koch, Koch, the overt carrying of firearms. Her Majesty was not amused. But that I had to do it because one, the threat then was from the Irish Republican, who again, on a number of occasions, again, I can't talk about it, there's all kinds of things. But I can assure you, and I hope, the present crop, as you know, these are so rare that we have these discussions. But I can assure you, people do, as Ingrid said, try and get in. Literally hundreds since George III bought Buckingham Palace. Trust me, people have been trying to get in throughout the centuries.
Absolutely fascinating. And I do feel a little bit more assured, actually, after speaking to both of you. So I'm happy about that. That's Di Davies, the former head of Royal Protection, and Ingrid Seward, the most well-connected of all royal reporters. She is the editor-in-chief of Majesty magazine. Thank you so much for being here. Now, I'm so disturbed by this. 8-year-olds acting out Love Island in the school playground. The whistle was blown by a very brave head teacher in Wales who wrote to all of his parents to say, how on earth is this going on? So do we need to protect our kids from this type of filth on TV? Or in fact, is this just all part of growing up? I'm a bit of a fan of Love Island. It's definitely a guilty pleasure for me. But there are so many aspects of the show that make me despair about modern dating culture. I hate the fact that teenagers think that that type of attitude to dating and that type of attitude to love is normal, that it's all about looks, it's all about having a buff body. But this story over the past 24 hours has shocked me. A Welsh headmaster has had to send a letter to parents of the school where he works after 8-year-olds, yes, people in year 4, have started to act out Love Island in the school ground. And Aled Rees, the head teacher, quite rightly says, I'm of the opinion that primary school pupils, this is in a letter that he sent to the parents at the school, aren't mature enough to watch a programme of this nature where a person's appearance is more important than their personality. Hear, hear. Couldn't agree more. But is it impossible, given this is such a cultural phenomenon, to keep Love Island away from our kids? And do you worry about the effect it's having on them? 0344 499 1000, let me know. Also, potentially, I guess, you could think that maybe Love Island just will teach people the lessons of the world. And as I said earlier, I watched Grease when I was 8 years old. I learned all about sex and condoms from Danny and Sandy, and arguably it didn't do me any harm. 0344 499 1000. But that head teacher, Aled Rees, from St. Tito Welsh School, joins me now alongside Amanda Gummer, who is a child psychologist. So, Aled, this was an absolutely fascinating letter. What prompted it? So 8-year-olds were sort of playing Love Island in the playground, is that right?
Yeah, there were a couple of incidences. Some were to do with name-calling and obviously based on appearance. And then there was a little game that had developed where individuals were pairing others together, again, based on appearance, because they seemed that the couples were good matches. So we decided that it was appropriate for us to try to nip this in the bud before it escalated into becoming something more than what it is at the moment.
Do you have any idea how the children were watching? Was it with their parents, do you think?
From conversations that we've had with the pupils, some admitted to cutting up on the sofa and watching with parents at 9 o'clock. Others were saying that they were watching it on catch-up TV, on tablets, etc.
But you sent this reminder out to basically say to parents, think again before you're allowing your young 8-year-olds to watch Love Island with you.
Yeah, I think we were in a position where we felt it was important for us to communicate the effect that it was having on behaviour in school. I'm obviously not in a position to be able to tell parents what they should or should not be doing with their children at home, but I do feel it's important if there's an adverse effect then on behaviour, and that has an impact on how other pupils are feeling in school, then I think it's important that we at least communicate that with parents so that they're able to make an informed choice in the future.
Well, thank goodness you did. What an amazing head teacher. But I have to say, I know you can't say it, Aled, because you have to stick to the rules. But I will say, if you're a parent watching Love Island with your child, then you're being a terrible role model. You are setting your child up for the most horrific teenage years. You're putting the most horrific ideas in your head. And to be honest, if you're doing that as a parent, think again. Think quickly. Amanda Gummer, child psychologist. I mean, come on, surely parents have to think again before cuddling up on the sofa and watching a sleazy show about sex with their 8-year-olds. I'm shocked.
Yeah, it's not great, and partly because of the age and stage of the children. I mean, I'm a big believer in we shouldn't make sex taboo. I think we should talk openly to children about
agree with that.
Sex and relationships right from an early age. But the kind of unhealthy relationships that are portrayed on Love Island are giving those kids a very distorted idea of what real life is like, or what it should be like. I worry that they aspire to it.
Well, and it's just about what's age appropriate as well, isn't it? Because last night, the whole last 15 minutes of the show, and don't get me wrong, I loved it. It was great entertainment. The whole last 15 minutes of the show was about the women lap dancing the men, and then the men lap dancing the women, scantily clad. It's just not appropriate viewing for an 8-year-old, is it? It's close to sort of soft pornography.
Well, exactly. And the other thing is that they don't have the sort of developmental skills yet. They haven't got to that stage of puberty. No. And so abstract concepts such as fidelity and trust and loyalty and authenticity and honesty and all of those really important things that form part of an adult relationship, they're quite abstract concepts. And most 8-year-olds, they're not ready for that kind of thing yet. They're still very in the black and white. Everything is black and white, very concrete, very tangible. And they just don't have they're not developed enough to be able to process things like that. So they take it at very much at face value. And if it's on TV, they think that that's real life and that's it's something to aspire to. And that's the biggest worry for me.
Aled, have you had a good reaction? Have you seen any difference since sending out that letter about Love Island to the parents?
We've had a very positive reaction, in fairness. Some individual messages, emails, and from the wider community as well. People who have obviously cottoned on to this story and have made an effort to contact the school to say that they fully support our actions.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, as I say, get the kids to bed, then put Love Island on. Make it your pre-bedroom viewing. But if you're a parent watching Love Island, oh my goodness, you need to be taught. You need some time in Aled's school. Thank you so much. That's Aled Rees, the head teacher, the very sensible head teacher at St. Thilo Welsh School, and Amanda Gummer, a child psychologist. What do you think about that? Gosh, I'm so shocked. Do you worry there's too much sex on TV altogether? Is there any way to protect our kids from it? 0344 499 1000. We'll discuss that in just a moment. I do promote watching the show if you're an adult.
Oh, you're
but at the same time, Ricky, I'm saying that as an 8-year-old, you should be not watching it. Why can an adult not watch it?
Because it's a pornographic con man. It's sick. You sit and watch that kind of stuff and try and tell us that you're a deep-thinking, broad-minded, intellectual individualist. You're talking, get off the air. Anybody who's got a TV set, I think, is just boiled frog. And I think that's what you are, I'll be honest with you.
So you want censorship, Ricky?
Pardon? Of
you
course
want
I do.
censorship?
Of course I do.
You want Mary Whitehouse back?
Yeah, come on, Mary, you are right. These clowns were all wrong. pontificating all over the place with a little bit of porn and a bit of this, that, and the next thing.
But Ricky, won't people just get it? Ricky, won't people just get it on the internet, though?
Well, we'll close it down there as well. But just a minute, stay with us, friend. I'm afraid that Mary Whitehouse wouldn't be listened to, and she's a school teacher. This man's getting listened to that you've had on this teacher, and I'm saying to him, you're too late. Are you one of the ones that laughed at Mary Whitehouse? Well, here's the price your daughters are going to have to pay. You follow me? Now, I'm a dance hall promoter, a professional dance hall promoter of yesteryear, right? And that's based on romance. This programme is based on filth. You got me? And those who watch it, I think they're just as filthy as the programme. I know I'm not supposed to say that, but I'm saying it.
Well, I think it's quite extreme.
It's the truth. The truth.
I think it's extreme for you to say that people who watch Love Island at all are filth.
Oh, well, I'll say it again then. They're filth. They're involved in pornography. And I'm not interested in a neighbour's daughter who's only 8 watching it. They don't care.
But you should be interested in that. Because adults should be able to watch what they want to watch, Ricky.
I'm the one that's interested. That's why I'm phoning up. If I wasn't interested and cared about my neighbour's daughter, I wouldn't phone up. If you're sitting there watching this stuff and your neighbour's daughter getting caught up in it as well, you're to blame.
So what TV is okay to watch?
Call it pornographic and let it go at that.
What TV is okay to watch? Like, for example, what about Poldark on the BBC, which has sex scenes? Is that filth?
Yes.
So what programmes do you watch?
Let me explain to you why it's filth.
Okay, go on.
Because, first of all, unlike this, when I'm talking to you, I am fortunate enough to be in the right of reply situation. Terrestrial television does not allow me or you the right of reply. All you do is to television, you sit down, you watch...
well, no, there's a right of reply. You get your remote, you turn it off. There's your right of reply.
You've got... Don't be silly. Programs designed so you don't switch off. You follow me? They're designed so you switch on. If you don't know, they'll talk to you in the street. Terrestrial television is now so powerful, it can actually get away with putting on some pornography as a program you're speaking about.
Well, I would argue, actually, Ricky, now, being honest, that the internet is actually far more powerful. The internet is completely unregulated. The internet is full of pornography.
Am I disagreeing with you? No, I'm not disagreeing with you.
Ricky, what I'm saying, if you ban from television all forms, from terrestrial television, all forms of content that has anything sexual in, do you not understand that you're just going to drive people to watch it on the internet?
I've heard this stuff. I'm a prohibitionist for alcohol, and I get all this stuff with alcohol as well. I'm a prohibitionist for alcohol. I'm a prohibitionist against pornography. Good old Mary Whitehouse, she had it right. But your daughters are going to pay the price for ignoring her. Don't get me wrong, I appreciate listening to my point of view. You know, I don't expect you to agree with it. But as far as I'm concerned,
well, I think it's extreme.
Not taught in schools.
I think it's extreme that you're calling me filth for watching Love Island.
I think yours is extreme.
But it makes me filth.
Extreme. You have become, in my opinion, a boiled frog. You know what I mean? We're talking.
No, what do you mean?
Well, you have become involved in watching this programme and others, which you have no control over. You switch on. When you go home tonight, switch your tail on. You have no choice at all whatsoever.
Yeah, but if I don't like it, I'll turn it off.
No, you won't. It's designed so you'll stay on.
Yeah, and I don't have no problem with that.
That's what it's there for. Well, that's what it's for. Yes, they have it in prisons, so the prisoners, it's to subdue them, keep them quiet. That's what television's for. That's what it does.
So just to clarify, anyone who watches Love Island is filth.
A boiled frog.
A boiled frog. Okay. Well, I'll take that, Ricky. Thank you for your call. That's Ricky from Glasgow. Sarah, also from Scotland, is on the line. Sarah, obviously, we've had an interesting debate today, but earlier in the show, we were talking about this really depressing poll result, which has shown that Brits are becoming less tolerant of same-sex relationships for the first time ever. What did you make of it? Oh, is Sarah there? Oh, I think we've lost Sarah. Let me know if Sarah comes back. But in the meantime, lots of comments as well about Dominic Grieve, who was on the show earlier, revealing to me that he may well quit the Tory party if Boris Johnson becomes Prime Minister. Huge reaction there. Jim on Twitter says, now Grieve backtracking on leaving Tories. What a waster. For years now, he's been telling all and sundry he would leave if Boris became PM. Maybe. Now it's maybe. I think he was pretty much saying definitely. Jim says, Driver, where to, Sir Grieve? Just across the chamber to my buddies. Driver, who are they? Grieve, Silvery, Clark, and all the rest that turn their backs on democracy and the 17.4 million. Go, the sooner the better. Faye says of Dominic Grieve, oh, mate, these Corbynistas are in utter denial. Oh, sorry, that's actually about the anti-Semitism, which we discussed earlier. And Lee says about Dominic Grieve, is he still issuing these idle threats? Why doesn't he do us all a favour and just up and leave now? It's not like he's done anything other than work against the Tory manifesto and the interests of the UK anyway. So very interesting comments. Dominic Grieve saying he will be out of the Tory party if Boris Johnson becomes Prime Minister. Brexiteers, I believe, up and down the country will be popping their champagne bottles as a result of that announcement. Maybe he could go and join Change UK. That would be successful, wouldn't it?